What if the person you thought was just a tired waitress, hiding behind a broken hand and a forced smile, was living a life so heavy with secrets that even an undercover diner owner could never have imagined? Don't blink, don't skip, because what he discovered after going undercover will leave you stunned. And before we begin, remember to subscribe so you never miss another story that grips your heart and keeps you hooked till the last breath. The undercover diner owner, a man named Richard, had always prided himself on building his chain of family-style restaurants from the ground up, but success had distanced him from reality, from the people who kept his dream alive day after day, and after hearing rumors of declining morale, poor service, and overworked staff in one particular location, he decided to do something radical. He shaved his beard, wore second-hand clothes, put on a greasy apron, and slipped into his own diner under the guise of a humble dishwasher to discover the truth for himself, never expecting that one young woman would change his outlook on life forever. Her name was Emily, a waitress no older than 23, with tired eyes, a plastered bandage wrapped around her left hand, and a limp in her walk that she tried to hide behind quick smiles and polite words. And from the very first moment Richard noticed her, he sensed something unusual. While most employees grumbled, cut corners, or avoided extra work, Emily carried trays with one good hand, cleared messy tables with determination, and even covered for her coworkers who slipped into the back to check their phones, all without a single complaint, though the pain was etched into her face with every motion. Curious, Richard began to pay closer attention, watching how she helped an elderly man cut his food into smaller bites, how she offered her tips to a busboy who was short on rent, how she rushed out into the rain to return a forgotten wallet to a customer. All small gestures that revealed a character far deeper than her job description. And yet, when she thought no one was looking, Richard saw her clutch her injured hand, tears silently threatening to fall, before she took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and returned to the floor as though nothing were wrong, a quiet soldier in the battlefield of everyday survival. As the days passed, Richard's curiosity grew into concern, and one afternoon during a short break, he overheard Emily speaking softly to another waitress, explaining that she had injured her hand at her second job in a warehouse, lifting heavy boxes she should never have been lifting, but she couldn't afford to stop because her little brother, only 10 years old, was in and out of the hospital with a rare condition that demanded endless bills, and since their parents had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, she was both mother and father, sister and provider, carrying the weight of an entire family on her fragile shoulders. Richard's heart ached. This wasn't laziness, this wasn't incompetence, this was raw sacrifice, and he knew he had stumbled upon something bigger than a simple employee review. He had found the very soul of his diner beating through a young woman who had nothing left except the will to keep moving forward. Unable to reveal himself yet, he tested her further, creating situations where a difficult customer would send back food, or the kitchen would delay an order, expecting her to break under the stress, but instead Emily handled each situation with grace, apologizing sincerely, offering free refills, even absorbing insults with a dignity that disarmed the angriest guests. And Richard realized she wasn't just working for tips. She was working for survival, for hope, for her brother's life. But the story didn't end there, because one night, long after the diner had closed, Richard stayed behind pretending to mop floors. When he saw Emily sitting alone in a booth, head in her hands, quietly sobbing, and from her bag she pulled out a pile of overdue hospital bills, a final notice from the landlord, and a photograph of her brother smiling weakly from a hospital bed. And Richard, though trained to stay undercover, felt tears sting his own eyes. This was no longer just about business, this was about humanity. The next morning, Richard gathered the courage to speak to her, pretending to be nothing more than a fellow worker, and asked why she didn't simply rest her hand, why she pushed herself so hard, and her answer shook him. Because if I stop, he stops. If I give up, he gives up. And I can't let that happen, not while I'm still breathing, she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and unbreakable strength. And Richard, though desperate to reveal himself, chose to wait for the right moment, for the truth to mean something more than shock value. Finally, at the end of his undercover week, Richard called a staff meeting, the employees rolling their eyes expecting another lecture from the new guy. But instead he stood tall, removed his cap, and introduced himself as Richard, their actual boss, the man behind the diner they worked in. And silence fell like thunder in the room, jaws dropping, whispers rippling across the tables, but none more stunned than Emily, who sat frozen, her broken hand clenched at her side, her eyes wide with disbelief. Richard's gaze softened as he spoke directly to her, telling everyone what he had witnessed, how he had seen her sacrifice, her kindness, her strength, and the crushing burdens she carried without complaint. And while the others shifted uncomfortably, ashamed of their own behavior in comparison, Emily's face turned pale, unable to fathom that someone had truly noticed. Then came the moment that stunned not just Emily but the entire staff. Richard announced that he would personally pay off her brother's hospital bills, set up a fund to cover future medical expenses, and promote Emily to assistant manager with double her salary, not as charity, but as recognition of the heart she had given to the diner when she had nothing left to give. Emily broke down sobbing, clutching her bandaged hand to her chest as if to hold herself together, whispering that she had never expected kindness, that she had only ever wanted to survive, and Richard, placing a hand on her shoulder, told her that sometimes survival itself is the greatest act of heroism. The room erupted in applause, and for the first time in years, the diner felt alive again, bound not by paychecks but by shared humanity. And as word spread through the town, customers began to return in droves, inspired by Emily's story and Richard's unexpected compassion, proving that sometimes the strongest foundations for business are not built on profit but on people. Yet the most powerful twist came weeks later, when Emily's brother, finally healthy enough to leave the hospital, walked into the diner holding a small thank you card, his eyes shining as he hugged his sister, and Richard, watching from behind the counter, knew he had not just changed an employee's life, he had saved a family, and in doing so, rediscovered the very reason he had opened his first diner long ago. Not to get rich, but to give people a place where hope could be served with every plate. And so the story of an undercover owner, a broken-handed waitress, and the miracle of human kindness became the legend of that small-town diner. A reminder to everyone who walked through its doors that you never truly know the battles someone is fighting until you choose to look beyond the surface. And when you do, you may just discover a heart strong enough to keep the whole world turning.